host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. We greet you live from the All-America city of Morrisville in Research Triangle Park, North Carolina. North Carolina is the 8th largest state in the Union of the United States of America. And we welcome you to the show where we talk about global affairs. We bring in special guests. We talk about all kinds of turbulence in world and U.S. politics. And today, just as I begin the show, we'll be giving our show on Thursday will be to be on Ukrainian independence and August 24th, 1991, when Ukraine became a sovereign nation. So I'm reaching out to some guests the entire show, even though we have the Shasta Star show. So think about Ukraine as we prepare. Meanwhile, let's just jump into some main issues before we bring in our guest and panel. Former President Donald Trump said he would surrender to authorities in Georgia on Thursday when he'll be arraigned on charges, including racketeering, alleging interference with the Georgia elections. He denies wrongdoing, and Mr. Trump's lawyers reached an agreement with the prosecutor's office in Georgia, settling his bond at $200,000. And this is in charge of, in addition to the hush money case, the insurrection case, and a number of charges against the former president. And he has declined to be in the Republican debate on Wednesday, and he's 30 points ahead in the polls and is the leading candidate for the nomination. The first time in United States history that an indicted president could be the party's nominee and even put himself in a position to be reelected as the president. One question is, would he pardon himself if he became the president if he is convicted? ARM, a chip designer owned by SoftBank Group, filed for an IPO that could be the biggest in America this year. It's said to be on the NASDAQ and is seeking a valuation of $70 billion. It has a monopoly on chips used on smartphones. And Microsoft submitted a new bid for the takeover Activision Blizzard, a gaming company. So once again, Microsoft is making its play. And Russia's defense ministry said that one of its fighter planes had destroyed a Ukrainian reconnaissance boat in the Black Sea. Japan said it would start to release treated radioactive water from the Fukushima nuclear power plant this Thursday. And, that's really about it today. And the number of the day for me is 70,000 Ukrainians who have died in the war, 100,000 casualties, and between the Russian and Ukrainian forces, 500,000 soldiers dead. No end in the war in sight, although I will say that it's been a more successful war in terms of the Ukrainian resistance. The question becomes now, what will it take for Putin to back down? Will he back down? And what does it mean for the future of Eastern Europe and the world order? I think he's going to continue to draw this war out as long as he can, knowing that he really is about not only oil, but Soviet power and bringing back the former Soviet Union. We're going to go ahead and bring our panel. Mark, if you could bring on our guest. Thank you for having me today.
No problem. Glad to do it. We've got several guests, and we've got some amazing ones. I'll start off with the ladies first, and we've got Jennifer Hughes, who is a life coach and also involved in the happiness space. And all along those lines, you were talking about all the sad news, and of course, we've been in the middle of a pandemic. But I know that one of the things that Jennifer Hughes does is that she has got some works out there, including a book, if I'm remembering correctly, called "Choose Happy, Be This, Not That," and she is definitely looking at ways that we can be happy even in these troubled times and all along those lines. And I do know that sometimes people will turn to different things to make themselves happy, be that the bottle, be that pills, be that even some overexertion in exercise. And sometimes people will even turn to relationships to make themselves happy as well. But Jennifer, if you'll share a little bit about your what you've got with your book and what you're doing and what it is like to be not just a life coach, but a happiness coach, because you're trying to transform lives by changing the way that we think, feel, and act. But I'd love to hear that story from you. And then, like I said, I've got some other guests as well. And of course, we'll continue our various discussions. But what does it take to be a happiness coach, and what are we doing wrong and everything? Because as I mentioned, there are some things that we turn to for happiness, and we might be turning to the wrong thing. So I know some people get happy by going out to sporting events, and some people get happy by different other things, including watching the news, even though I don't know how you get happy watching the news, and I am a journalist, but I know a lot of the news is very sad oriented, and it definitely is got some struggles. But talk to us. Tell us about being a happiness coach.
Yeah, well, I started on this journey because I was really depressed. I was really just I was just in a bad place. I was in a really dark time, and I realized that I couldn't go on like this. I just couldn't keep having every day be the same like this, where because I was trying to repress my negative feelings, right? I was trying to not feel the negative feelings that I was having. And what the result was that I didn't feel any positive feelings, but the negative feelings magnified. So I just felt terrible. And I had a sign hanging in my room, on my wall that said, happiness is a choice. And I had to ask myself, is this true? Do I really believe this is true? And I, through a lot of experimentation and a lot of reading and learning and, trying, I discovered, I came out of the depression eventually, and I discovered the answer was yes, you can choose happiness. So it's not like a simple thing that you just like, okay, I just choose to be happy, and then all of a sudden you're happy all the time, every day. It's something that you have to choose every day. It's really about preventing the preventable suffering. There's going to be still things that happen in your life that you don't feel, that they're going to make you happy. They're going to be hard things. You're going to lose loved ones. You're going to, have health challenges, all kinds of things like that. People do terrible things sometimes. So it's really like those things. It's okay to mourn a loss. It's okay. Like, you're still going to have normal emotions. It's just preventing the preventable, really. So it's kind of a skill that you can do that you're where you're trying to, it's preventing the preventable suffering.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. I know that a lot of times there's been a lot of conversation lately about mental health, the mental health of our young people. And I want to say that it was even your own family that helped you go on this journey, because there were things going on in your own family and all in that space, as I remember from the first time that we met and all along those lines. But I was just wondering if you could talk about the mental health aspect, and then I'll bring in one of our other guests as well, who is in the wellness space, and then I'll get one that's in the financial space as well, and then we'll bring in our other panelists, and of course we'll just continue the conversation. But I know that one of the things that we've talked about is mental health, and the importance of it is definitely something that we hear a lot about in society.
Yes, it is so important, and it's so rampant that people are so depressed everywhere. People are just they're just really struggling with the pandemic and with just kind of the social culture of blame and exaggeration, and everything is catastrophic. Just in our social constructs that we have, our social context, and it really creates a lot of turmoil for people. And so it really is something that I love to help people to like upgrade how they think, how they feel, and what they do, because it really changes everything in their life. You're really, if you want to be more happy, you have to change your story. You have to change how you explain things to yourself, your explanatory style, and your kind of what you're thinking about it. If you say, for example, if you're sitting in traffic or something, and it's going to take you a while to get to work, you might be late. You could be sitting there really stressed out. You could be thinking, oh, this is just terrible. Get really stressed out. Or you could be thinking, here I am by myself in my car. I'm completely safe. And now I have more time to listen to my audiobook or to prepare myself mentally before work or something like that. So you can and it changes how you feel. You can see how those kinds of things would change how you feel. So it's the same thing with your relationships. If you are, if you're saying, oh, my partner is just trying to, or my partner doesn't love me if you don't, do this certain thing. Or if you start to look for proof where your partner does love you, like, oh, my partner did that for me, therefore I know, I feel loved. So it changes everything. When you change the story that you tell yourself, it changes everything.
And definitely, I'm going to bring in Gladstone as well. You might have a question as well, but Gladstone is definitely, I believe, if I remember correctly, around from the one of the islands and all along those lines, but he is a health advocate, and he's actually got his own company that talks about how we can eat healthy to also help our lifestyle and all along those lines. So Gladstone, tell us where you're calling in from and a little bit about your company, because I know that you were even talking about how you grew up and some of the things that you learned in Dominica, if I remember correctly, is
Yes.
some of the things that you bring into the company that you have founded as well. So I know a lot of folks are oftentimes, just like we're concerned about our mental health, we're concerned about our diet and a number of other things. And it looks like you have created a company and even a tea, maybe that is family oriented, that is helping in that space. So tell us a little bit about your company and what you are doing as well.
Yes. So thank you so much, Mark. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to share in what I do. So I'm actually from Dominica in the Eastern Caribbean, small island. So it's kind of, not very popular in the US, but it's a very green and natural island. It's actually called the Nature Island of the Caribbean. And so I grew up in there in a small community. And so I grew up in a very natural type of living, right? And so even my mom was a traditional herbalist. So even as a kid, I grew up like, knowing how to like blend herbs, spearmints, peppermints, and so it started at a young age. And so right around the age of about 15 or 16 years old, I migrated to the US to kind of continue my education after high school, and also to kind of pursue my dream, which is kind of like to bring the herbal teas to the forefront. So that has kind of been my journey. And in 2014, I did sort of a test, right? I formulated this 28-day transformation program. So I had one herbal tea blend, had about 8 or 9 different herbs in there. I had like a nutritional plan, and I found about 10 clients from different states in the US, right, to sign up to the plan free of charge for 28 days. And of course, I offered coaching lessons as well, support. And so at the end of the 28-day plan, the results are just amazing. One of my clients, she was having up to, I would say, 25 migraine attacks per month. And after going through the plan for the food, for the herbal teas, changing her mindset and so forth, it reduced to less than 3 attacks for the month. Other people had weight loss issues, skin issues. And so after, seeing that, it was clear that, herbal teas is definitely a pillar, to wellness. And so I started the company in 2014, and I've been doing ever since. So the passion is really to bring herbal tea blends to the forefront. And the journey has been one of which where I had to kind of, it's an awareness, right? So when I started the company in 2014, a lot of Americans didn't really know what herbal teas are and what they can do and how we should use them. So the idea behind the brand that I have started is that to view herbal teas as a lifestyle, kind of a new wellness culture, a new ritual, in the very same way that we Americans consume coffee at this point. Just so many benefits, right? And in how they're prepared, the different things that they support in the body, it's just amazing. And so that's kind of been my journey up until this point.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and everything. One thing I was going to ask both of you, and then I'll bring in our final guest and everything. He's actually in the finance space and all along those lines. But to you, Gladstone, and to Jennifer, what do you think are some of the mistakes that people make in general in terms of their wellness journey and in terms of even happiness? I kind of alluded to that with you, Jennifer, because I do know that in your talks that you sometimes talk about how we turn to some of the wrong places for happiness and all along those lines. So I'd love to hear both of your thoughts about what are the mistakes that we are making in our wellness journey. But I'll start with you, Jennifer, and then I'll bring Rick in about the financial thing, and then we'll bring in our regular panelists, and they may have questions for all three of you as well. But definitely, I'll start with you, Jennifer.
So one of the biggest mistakes we make in our health is that we are unwilling to get uncomfortable. We are so we're not, if you do strength training, it's going to hurt. It's uncomfortable to actually do the process. If you, you're going to cut out the junk and go for the healthy food, it feels like it's going to hurt. It feels like, no, I want that pleasure. So it's, but it's short lived. It's like 90 seconds of, bliss on your tongue. And then it's like, another who knows how long of health consequences. You know, your blood sugar will drop and you have weight to lose and that kind of thing. So one of our biggest mistakes is being unwilling to be uncomfortable. So that's one of the things that we have to do is get pushed past that comfort zone. One of the mistakes we make in our happiness is to think that there's some things that we think that we have to have this or we're not going to be happy. And it's like I need to, like, they did that. We blame. We think that's going to make us happy. And that is the opposite. It makes us unhappy. Where blame exists, misery persists. And so we also think things like if we're right, we want people to know we're right. So we really like fight for our thing, and sometimes that's fine. But if you're in a relationship with somebody, you have to allow them to think you're wrong, or else you're always trying to push your like viewpoint onto them, and they'll either like stop fighting with you and think you're crazy and like kind of step back from the relationship, or like it's just not going to create a good relationship. We think it's going to make us happy to be right, but it's actually going to make you more unhappy because your relationships will suffer.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's your take on that, Gladstone? And like I said, I'm gonna bring Rick in to share some wisdom around the fiscal space and all along those lines. But what is your take on some of the mistakes that we make?
Well, one of the biggest mistakes, and it's really not our fault. I mean, we've just been programmed in the West, right, from the time we were born to kind of eat certain foods, and we've been conditioned to a certain way, right? So one of the biggest misconceptions is that it's money. Most people think it's a quick fix, right? It's a quick fix. So really, the fact that we view food as an expense, right? I have to go to the grocery store, I have an expense bill. But that's really, we should not view it as that. We should view food as an investment, right? Kind of have how you have like your mutual funds, you have your stocks, your bonds, and so forth like that. So it's really the mindset shift, right? It's understanding that our body is a temple, right? And so we want to be able to change that, right? And that might mean, well, I have to like make some cost savings in other things. Maybe it's apparel, maybe it's clothes, maybe it's video games, whatever you need to do, and look at really what the foods and stuff that you put in your body as an investment and not an expense. And then the second thing I would say is it's a journey, right? You have all these fads out there, but these things are temporary. It's really one foot step ahead, one step by step, day by day, you're making these changes, right? Slow changes, and understanding that the body is just intelligent design, right? It's designed that once you start putting good things in it, like the co-host said, once you start thinking and meditating on the right thoughts, and you begin to do that, no is a great word in the dictionary. Most people, they have problems saying no. And so these are the kind of things that I think would really help your audience and people who listen to understand that it's a journey, and that food is really an investment. It's not an expense, it's an investment.
And speaking of food, real quickly, and speaking of food, it's a side of Ukraine we don't often talk about, is the fact that they provide so much grain to the world, and with what's going on. And I think that there's a connection between the blue and gold in their flag, which symbolizes kind of like the connection to food and productivity. And I just think it's so sad that we don't know that this war is also so much about people, food prices and hunger around the world. And if Ukraine is shut down, what is that going to mean in terms of wheat and grain, right?
Yeah.
Not only Europe, but all around the world. So
yeah, definitely. And along those lines, I was going to bring in, because Gladstone mentioned the notion of food as an investment. Well, Rick is actually in Georgia and is involved in that investment space. I think he's worked with a couple of Fortune 1000 companies and has definitely done some stuff in the investment space. So definitely, if you'll share a little bit about your own journey, Rick, and then I'll bring in some of the guests. And I'm sure there's a variety of questions about everything from our physical health to our wellness around mental health to our fiscal wellness, because I know one of the things that Nick Palveda talks about, the founder of the network, and he's here with us, and all along with Kim Calhoun being the other founder, is the notion that we don't teach about fiscal literacy and a number of other things in that space. But I'm just wondering your take on our fiscal health, because that is another part of our health journey and everything, Rick. So if you will share your own background and where we are with our fiscal health.
Certainly. Well, thank you for having me here and as part of the conversation. I lead the HR Search Co. It's a leveraging 25 years of corporate human resources experience in the media and entertainment space, and now in the executive search space for HR folks. But leaning back on the fiscal and the financial security part of things, I can talk about things in the context of the workplace. And financial security, a big part of that has to do with happiness, has to do with your job and where you work. A lot of companies are really investing in wellness and health and wellness initiatives, because if you think about it, I think for most people, if you ask them what makes you unhappy, if there is a trigger for unhappiness, a lot of times it is around work and questions around where people are at, unfortunately. You spend more time at work than anywhere else. Most of your waking day is thinking about work or being consumed about work. Oftentimes, there's something called the Sunday blues where you're enjoying your weekend, but you're thinking about, oh no, I got to go back tomorrow. What are people thinking? Or where's this project at? It's very hard to unwind. And it is a very real source of stress. So companies are doing a lot of things these days. Certainly in the past 10, 15 years, there's been a lot of trends and a lot of investment on health and wellness and happiness, really, and trying to find ways to make people secure. If you're not in a place where you are happy, or you're not on a track that really makes you feel like there's room for reasonable growth and prosperity, then it might be time to think about doing something different, and that might have a very direct relationship to the amount of stress that you have in your life when it comes to your financial security. If I can make that connection.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I do know, like you said, that a number of companies, I know even here in the Raleigh-Durham area, there are a number of companies that were adding wellness, like you just mentioned, to their workforce. And they were still trying to do that even as they were trying to bring workers back from the pandemic, because a number of people were at home for a number of years, but there were initiatives in the past that would have everything from home care, because I do know that a lot of times both the woman and the man like to have some access to their children even while working and all along those lines. And I do know that there were some exercise programs as well. So I'm here in North Carolina, and I want to say that Cisco and Red Hat and a couple of other companies and even SAS have had programs where they have tried to make the family a part of the corporate culture and all along those lines. And I think that that's what you were kind of alluding to, Rick, because I'm sure you've seen that even in some of your own work and everything.
Absolutely. Yes. A lot of companies, spend a lot of time. If you boil down human resources strategy, it's all about finding people, growing those people, and keeping those people. And the companies that are having the best time of keeping people are the people that are paying attention to engagement and culture and the entire individual and keeping that work-life balance equation in mind.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you on that. I'm sure Steve has some questions. I want to bring in the boss of the network. So Nick is going to come in and share some thoughts, because he is a pension attorney and has definitely been involved in a lot of things in that space as well. And we've also got Lee Newton Rhodes with us, as well as Jatovi and Sasha Starr, who does our Ukrainian show that'll be coming up in about a little bit over half an hour, and all in that space. So definitely glad to have all of these amazing individuals, and they might have some questions for you as well. So definitely interested in that. But Nick, you're hearing the conversation. So what is your thoughts around the wellness space and around even the fiscal space and everything? Because we've got a full house, but glad to have a full house.
Well, I think it's a great topic.
Hollywood Squares.
Yeah, for Hollywood Squares today.
It's like the Brady Bunch. How did they look up like that and see each other?
Yeah, go look
You do that. It just doesn't work.
Well, the thing is, we need to bring happiness to television, because television is one just big miserable place, as Jennifer well knows. And
we should rename this Happy Hour.
This is the happy hour. That'll be another show. But the thing is,
It's hard to stay happy with all the depressing news that we see too. I mean, in terms of just every day the news cycles keep feeding in. It's hard,
And people don't know, they don't even teach mental health in school. I don't know how many people here who are in high school took a mental health class. Raise your hands. Anybody? No, it's one of the most important things of your life is to be happy, Jennifer, in case you don't know it. Matter of fact, I moved to Durham. There's somebody here from the Raleigh-Durham area, right? I moved to Crosdale Country Club on the 15th hole just to get away from some miserable people that were at my old community in Briar Creek. You know, they were on the board, the homeowners association board, and they were just the most miserable. If you've been on work, if you ever spent time with homeowners associations, someone really nice, the last one was that these people exercised what they called misery. And they tried to take their misery, and there was 3 of them, so now they're majority, and spread the gospel of misery among all the people that lived in the community. Now, I even told them, I said, look, I don't have to live here. I can live anywhere I want. I run a pension internet company. I don't even run it anymore. And so I said, I'm leaving. And I picked up and I moved to the Crossdale Country Club. I don't know if it's going to be better here, but Jennifer, it is so important. They should have a mental health check. And a lot of it is who you're associating with, okay? And if you're associating with the wrong people, one mentor of mine told me, my problem in life, and he retired at age 40 and was a multimillionaire, he goes, my problem in life, looking back, is I spent too much time with the wrong people, too much time with the wrong people. So you got to get these people out of your life, put good people. And frankly, you got to get the media, a lot of the negative media out of your life. So anyway, Jennifer, heads up with you. I wish we had a whole hour with you. Gladstone, are you in Dominica by any chance right now? Are you moving from
No, I'm actually in Washington, D.C. actually at this point.
Washington, D.C. Okay, but you're
but I go back and forth pretty frequently to Dominica.
Yeah, my sister and brother-in-law went to Dominica, and she said it was great. In other words, the thing is, it's a beautiful, lush island. He's a botanist by trade, so he had to go there to go check it out. And I wanted to go, but I heard you had a hurricane and it destroyed the island. But
that was back in 2018. Yeah, Maria. But we've bounced back since then, actually. So.
Really? Okay, right. All right. Anyway, the thing is, it's on my to visit list. I just got back from Spain, and Dominica is also on the list to go to as soon as they clear the airport. You know. And Rick, human resources in Raleigh.
No, I'm actually in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're in Atlanta now. Okay. So what do you do in human resources?
Yeah. So I spent about 18 years as within a global HR organization, Turner Broadcasting here in Atlanta.
Sure. Right.
And
I know Ted. Sure.
Yeah. And did all sorts of things within that organization, that HR organization. And then for the last 7 years, I've been working as an HR on building an HR executive search firm. And we're based here in Atlanta. We also do corporate legal executive search, but that's sort of my angle. But I'm kind of I get to peek behind the curtain at a lot of different HR organizations and companies big and small across the country. So I have a really good sort of unique perch, if you will, on how different companies handle organization design within human resources, but then also, how different industries have different challenges unique to their own. One thing I'll mention that triggered a thought about, the people that are around you and how you absorb, energy and happiness. Read a book recently that talked about the one of the salient points was around you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with. Right. So if you think about the people that you attract into your life, you're the average of those 5 people. So, you spend a lot of time with really positive people, you're probably going to index toward positive. If you have, more than, half of those people are negative type folks, you might find yourself being drawn in that direction. So just pay attention to, who you spend and who you choose to align your time with, because that really comes out in sort of how you show up in the world.
Hey, Rick, just a little bit.
What you said is really important, Rick, just then is you are who you spend time with. And the thing is, and part of the reason I didn't get into criminal law is the joke was if you become a criminal law, you become a criminal thinking.
Become criminal thinking yourself and everything. Hey, Rick, just really quick.
The secret is lawyers are criminals anyways.
Oh, please.
Rick, just really quickly, just out of curiosity, because you mentioned that you had worked with a major leader in the entertainment space that everybody knows who Ted Turner is, that are following the media. Everybody remembers CNN and a number of other things that he started, including Turner movies and a number of other things along those lines. But what was it like? Did you get a chance to actually directly work with Mr. Turner? And what was Mr. Turner like as a business individual in your own personal assessment?
Yeah, great question. I get that question a lot. So I started there in at the late 90s, and 99, it was right around the time he was starting to exit the day-to-day business. If you remember, 2001 was the big AOL Time Warner merger, and he just sort of continued to sort of be less and less of a day-to-day factor. But he loomed large. I did have the opportunity to talk with him once or twice when I was first there. You know, a maverick, a visionary, and somebody who was very, very widely respected, and because he kind of had a Jack Welch sort of ability as a business leader to really connect with everybody and understand where people were, and you know, pay attention to where you know, good people could come in and do some really powerful things. So yeah, he's somebody who changed a lot of lives, certainly around the world. With the you know, with CNN and the way that news and information, and you know, real pioneer there, and just a really great leader as well, for a business. Very popular and very tuned in and very aware of what was happening at all different levels.
Hey, Rick, just really quickly, have you been following it all, and did you have any thoughts about, we have a show that Rick Rosner is part of, and he is a writer formerly with Jimmy Kimmel and everything, but I was just wondering if you had been following the writer strike, since that was part of your industry, and whether you had any thoughts around that, because there are some unhappy writers.
Yeah, no. So I don't have too much to add there. Warner Brothers was a part of the Time Warner empire, and Warner Brothers, of course, a huge studio. But I had very little day to day there, and can't offer anything of value to the panel about the writer strike.
No problem at all. Just was curious. Hey, Gladstone, just really quickly, just to let you know, Steve, and there are others that may have questions as well, but he likes to go up to DC regularly. I know that Nick teases him sometimes that he is actually running for president. So I was just wondering your thoughts about DC, because DC is definitely an interesting place. This is where the president is based. And of course, we've got the debate that's going to take place on Wednesday on the Republican side in Milwaukee. But I just wanted your take on the area of DC, both from the political length as just well as living up there, because you came from Dominica and now you are calling the DC area home. So I just wanted your take on DC as an area.
Yes, thank you, Mark. So yes, I migrated from Dominica, and I've been living in the DC area for 20 plus years. So I kind of consider myself a sort of a Washingtonian to a certain extent. You know, DC has been pretty sort of a very good place for like job security, a lot of government agencies, even like, you know, the crash of 2009, that housing crash, you know, the bubble. DC was sort of kind of like an economic bubble, and a lot of people, you know, have migrated. So I've seen the trends. It has become just very, very populated, you know, the Washington metro area. You know, people are just, you know, the politics, it's just rife with politics everywhere. I'm really a big proponent of politics myself. I think I consider it really a necessary evil, you know, just to kind of keep me sane and everything. In terms of the wellness space, it's pretty progressive. A lot of people are into health and wellness, you know, just kind of like the working class, you know, people who are professionals, young professionals. So it's really a great place to be. You know, if you guys have visited, or if you want to visit, it's really great. But from a political standpoint, it can get a bit challenging in that space, especially when the election gets closer and for the primaries and all that stuff. But yeah, it's a great place to be.
Yeah, Gladstone, just along the same lines, just really quickly, one of the other things that I've always observed, and it's been a minute since I've been to DC. I know I was at the Obama inauguration. I've been several other times as well, is that it is very much of a immigrant welcome space. I know that sometimes we talk about immigrants, but whenever I think about DC, I think about the fact that a number of people from the Caribbean are there. There's some great Caribbean restaurants. There's some great African restaurants. There are great other things that are there, including those in the Asian space and the European space. So I just wondering if you could speak to that, because when I think of places that are welcoming to our immigrants, DC does seem to be one of the more welcoming spaces. I would argue that to some degree New York is as well, and even parts of California and a number of other places, but definitely DC is probably one of the most welcoming in terms of accepting of the immigrant population. But I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yes, yes. Actually, that's exactly right. So it's a huge, diverse population, like, from people from everywhere. It seems like, lots of great restaurants, lots of, like, Ethiopian restaurants, Caribbean restaurants, Central America and South American food. It's really a melting pot. I mean, they have like lots of festivals. They have the Caribbean festival in the June time frame. They have all sorts of festivals. So it's really a melting pot and a rather harmonious place to be, actually, DC. So definitely, I would have to agree there
Yeah.
for sure.
Don't know if the rest of the panel, Lee and Jatovi and Nick had some questions earlier, and even Sasha, if y'all have any thoughts to our amazing guests, and definitely Steve, I think you were going to ask something as well. So I'll turn it over to the rest of my panel and hear what they've got to say about the wellness, because we're talking about various aspects of wellness. But anybody have any questions that you are curious
Yeah,
about?
I got two questions. One directly at Rick and one just at the whole panel. Rick, in terms of the economy now, hiring, firing, laying off, how is the economy doing from your viewpoint? And also, is happiness really a choice? And to how much is it? People, obviously your family, you can't choose, and trauma that's put into your life, you can't undo. But how much is happiness at the end of the day a choice?
Yeah. On the second question, I'll defer to Jennifer. On the first one about the hiring, where I see the market right now, I think it's kind of leveling out a bit. Earlier this year, it was definitely a candidates market, which means, for every job that was open, or for every candidate who's looking for a job, they might have had a couple of different options. When it turns into a sort of a company's market or the hiring market, it's when they have their choice of folks. I think right now it's kind of in the middle a bit. Certainly hiring is robust and people are still moving around and doing things. But it's not at either extreme right now. Companies haven't hit the brakes, but they're not necessarily, going 150 miles an hour. So I would say right now we're kind of at an equilibrium a bit on the job market.
Hey, I definitely want to hear Jennifer's thoughts around happiness. I was going to tell both of you that I work at a different job other than Pod TV, and that's the Hey Heritage Center. I actually work at a couple of them. It's a cultural arts center. And yesterday, my immediate supervisor was literally just doing what Rick was saying, which actually surprised me, because in addition to being in the whole cultural space and being a cultural leader, he is also an actor and a musician. So he was literally having to get in by today his promo tape, and then hopefully he'll get a call back on Wednesday. So even though we're in the middle of a strike, there are actors that are still getting jobs and are still looking for jobs and all in that space, because he was literally having to get it in by midnight. And I asked him when it would be a callback if he had one, and he said that would be on Wednesday. So like I said, and I think that that's probably somewhere in either North Carolina or it could be even in, as a matter of fact, I remember he said it's in the Greensboro area. So I think it's probably for a commercial or something like that. But yeah, there are folks that are still looking for jobs of all sorts, even those in the arts as well. Jennifer, your talk on the happiness? Yes, it's on you.
Yes. So the happiness. So what it is you can choose. It's how you respond, right? It's the story that we tell ourselves. So it's been scientifically proven that your thoughts fire before your emotions, and therefore cause your emotions. So whatever you're thinking about something, because the same thing can happen to two different people and they'll have a totally different response. You could have somebody who like, it's hard to think of an example right on the spot, but you could have somebody who has the same thing happen, but they both respond differently. And that's because it's your thoughts. It's the story you make up about it. It's what you make it mean to you. So that is the part that's a choice. You're still going to have hard things happen to you. Psychologists call this clean pain. And then there's also dirty pain, which, like, clean pain is, you're going to lose a loved one. You're going to have a health challenge or a chronic illness or something like that. You're going to have, politicians in the White House you can't do anything about or whatever that you don't agree with. But there's a lot of dirty pain that we pile on top of that. So we make things worse for ourselves by making up a story of, this is terrible, this is catastrophic, this is the worst thing ever. And that really makes it, compounds everything. It makes it much worse. So what I like to focus on is preventing the preventable suffering, because we're all gonna, like, living here on this earth, we're gonna have suffering. but you don't have to make it worse. At least you can still decide the story that you tell yourself and how you respond to it. That's the freedom that we have, is how we respond to things that happen in our lives that can either make it worse or make it better. And so it's preventing the preventable suffering. Yes. So I believe
Thank you.
it's mostly a choice.
Toby, any thoughts? You're usually sitting back in the cut, and I know you probably got some amazing questions because you oftentimes do, and all along those lines. So, Toby, what are some of your thoughts about this conversation?
I wholeheartedly believe in what Jennifer's just talking about right there, because in anything I do, I tell everybody, especially when, we have hard things to do, you can either do it happy or you can do it sad. It's your choice. Which one's more fun? That's what I tell kids to adults. Hey, this is what we're doing. You can either do it happy or sad. It has to get done. Which one's more fun for you to do it at? So I wholeheartedly believe in everything that you just said, Jennifer. The big question that I had, because Gladstone's sitting kind of quiet right now, but I am curious, with the herbal teas, what is the most outlandish flavor that you put together?
In outlandish in the point of from a taste profile, or
from both taste profile because for example, the reason this question comes up for me is there's that show on Disney Plus where, what was it? The World According to Jeff Goldblum, and he went on a travel talking about ice creams, and there were some strange ice creams that I had never heard. I think there was a hibiscus ice cream. It was crazy. So I'm curious, what strange flavors of herbal tea have you come across or created?
So that's a great question. So let me if I can just draw back for a second. So the reason why most people don't really, especially in America and in the West, it's we are so, our taste buds are so enamored with, the sweet and the salty, right? So the sour and the bitter is so important because most of the medicinal benefits, believe it or not, for our body and for our life is derived from the bitter and the sour. So that said, most people, when they like, for instance, as an example, if you go to the grocery store and you buy an herbal tea, right? And then if you look at the directions, it says you should brew this tea for, I don't know, 6 minutes, 7 minutes, right? Well, in fact and in truth, that's not accurate, right? So me being an herbalist and my background, you want to brew an herbal tea for at least 15 minutes or so. And the reason why you want to do that is because after about 15 minutes of brewing and you want to cover it, that's when you actually begin to extract majority of the medicinal benefits, right? But because of the narrative, they tell people, well, just steep it for 6 minutes, and then you steep it and you throw most of the benefits away. Because why? Because the more you steep it, it's the more it becomes slightly harsh or bitter to the taste, right? So that's one of the things I just want the panel and your audience to know. Then number two, that said, I have brewed some, especially a lot of the herbs, they are more kind of like tasting and on the bitter side, right? The harsh side. So I have made blends that, man, are just so potent, like, yellow dock, burdock, Cereus, right? These herbs, they are very, and especially when you brew them for the desired length, they are very bitter, they are very potent. I mean, you take one taste of that and I assure you, you will just spit it out of your mouth. But guess what? It's really healing for the body. Because one of the things that people don't realize is herbal teas is like so important, right? So one of the things that herbal teas do is that they break down free radicals and toxins in the body, right? So it's not just a pleasant drink that you just drink, but you're drinking this drink and at the same time you're getting all these benefits, right? While you drink that. So I would say that's one of the most outlandish ones, believe it or not. And then of course these teas are for like people who are like want to kind of actually cleanse the system, right? So if you think of like your car, right? So basically, you buy a car and then you say, well, every 3,000 miles, and you want to do the oil change, right? So if you think about the human body, how do we do an oil change for us? Like, how do we cleanse the body? How do we do that? A lot of people talk about, well, you know, I was eating a certain way, I was using, you know, not taking care of my body, right? And then they have a revelation, and then they get up when they say, you know what, I'm gonna start eating right. That's a good move. That's a good direction. We all applaud that. But guess what? Between all the years you were smoking and drinking and eating not the right foods, and then you're making that transition, in the middle, there is what I call a detoxing period has to take place, right? Because you want to get, that's when you will get the full benefits, right? So a part of that detoxing process is, you know, using the herbal teas. It's intermittent fasting, believe it or not, you know, because when we digest food, it takes about 24 hours for this food to actually go through entire for the body. But then in the Western culture, they're saying, well, we have to eat 3 meals a day. So really and truly, when you really think about it, the biggest killer to the human being in the West is food. We're eating so much food, the body cannot get a chance. The body cannot get a moment of rest. It's just you know, I was telling it's funny, I'll just make a quick joke. I was telling my friend that the other day, I was saying, it's like, imagine you go and you buy a car from the dealership, and the moment you take that car from the dealership, you never turn it off. You come home, you go to work, you're packed, you go to bed, it's still running. It's running continuously. And that's what's happening to us. And so there is that link between that, and I think, you know, the mental health, the mental wellness. Like, for instance, one of my herbal tea blends that I have curated, it's called the Body Relax. You know, in that tea blend, I have chamomile, I have hawthorn leaf and berries, I have skullcap, I have catnip. These herbs have been proven to working together. They function sort of as like a mild sedative. So for instance, after, like, you know, a long day, right, you brew that cup of tea for about 20 minutes, and then you have that cup of tea and it just brings you down, you know? So
I got a quick question though, and this is going to tie all three of the guests together. Because food, we know that foods have an effect. I mean, just as you're talking about with the teas and everything, foods also have an effect on the body's odors. So I don't know if tea, as well as you're doing that detoxing. So and to tie all three together in a way. So as a person's doing the detox, how in HR, Rick, do you handle a person coming and causing an effect to everybody in the office with a smell? And Jennifer, how do the individuals stay happy around somebody who is really detoxing the air that you're walking through?
Okay, I'll start there. So, you know, human resources is always, you know, a lot of really, you know, employee relations type, you're always on your toes, right? So how you would how you handle something like that, there's no easy, you know, you tell the person to do this or that, but you know, it's a real thing that affects other people. Hopefully it's a temporary thing that people can kind of keep their eye on the long term, that it's going to be a positive for the individual, and hopefully for their impact on effectiveness in the company. But that's an interesting angle. I guess if you think about it, everything kind of has an angle and an effect on the people that you spend a lot of time around. And I know we all spend a lot of time at work. So
yeah, chalk it up to climate change, right?
And I think there's also something to be said. You really made a point that we eat too much, 3 square meals a day. And, as a former college tennis player, now I'm in politics and media. But the trick is, after COVID, I'm now like in the best shape I've been in 30 years, because I trained my son for 4 years in tennis again. So I hadn't touched a racket in 14 years. Because I'm not eating out as much, I dropped weight. The other habit that I picked up again, which I did when I was an athlete, was to not eat after 6:30 p.m. That takes a lot of discipline, but I'm actually what I weighed when I was my top playing college tennis career, and it just makes you feel so good. So there's a tendency to eat out all the time. You feel like you got to eat 3 meals a day, and if you just eat when you're hungry and exercise and have that balance and enjoy things in moderation. But that's what I've been doing. And I think in many ways, the pandemic actually helped me get fit again. because I didn't have to stay in a car every day for 20 minutes driving. If I'm traveling, I work. If not, I'm at home. Semi-retired, so if I want to, if I want to take a nap for an hour, I can nap for an hour. If I want to start work at 3 o'clock, I start work at 3 o'clock. And that's what really grinds people, is kind of like this: get in the car, go to work, be there all day, come back. You got to take the kids, you got to prepare dinner, the day, and then you got the kids' activities on the weekend, and that's just what burns people out, and they don't get the time to exercise and do those things. Then they gain the weight, healthcare, gets jeopardized. It's just this never-ending cycle. So hopefully
it's definitely a cycle. Hey, Gladstone, just really quickly and everything. One of the things that I know that happens on occasion is, I know from coffee lovers, and I'm actually a big iced tea fan. Some people say that I'm almost addicted to sweet tea and all along those lines, but there are those that are purists. So I was just wondering, how much does that play a conversation? Because I know that there are some people that are go get, and I'll just name the brand, they'll go get Lipton, because Lipton does have some herbal teas and all along those lines. And then there are folks that are like, nope, that's not a real herbal tea, and you need to get these different types of blends that are actually going to be more traditional and more true to form and everything. So I just wondered your take on those that are purists, because I'm thinking that you're probably more of a purist in the tea space and not necessarily wanting people to run off and get a bag of Lipton or one of the other more less purist kind of variations.
Well, that's a great question. And answer to your question, I mean, there are many good brands out there. There are many brands that actually sort of focus on, solo blends, right? Where it's just chamomile by itself, or it's spearmint by itself, it's dandelion by itself. And these are great. I would just say, like, to your audience, that when you go to brew these teas, make sure you're brewing them for at least 15 minutes, right? You want to put a saucer over the cup, because then that's when you're getting like everything from the herb, right? But in terms of what I've sort of specialized in, I specialize on sort of the herbal tea segment and combination of herbs, right? So my blends have anywhere from maybe 6 to 8 different herbs, different plants, and different parts of different plants, right? So kind of like the way I go about it is, for instance, like, let's say somebody who has like high blood pressure issues, right? So I would sort of kind of focus on the herbs that have been known to be proven to help, over time in clinical studies, to help to reduce and improve the high blood pressure numbers, things like hawthorn leaves and berries, right? And then I will then combine those with other herbs that are complementary. So really and truly, you're getting like a cup of tea that's very well balanced, right? And believe it or not, after steeping for 15 minutes, it doesn't require a sweetener. And that's the other thing too. Herbal tea should not be drank with any sweetener, like no sugar or any honey or anything, because it reduces the potency of it. And another thing, again, I would like your panelists to understand is, if you just incorporate herbal teas as a lifestyle. Like you say, okay, I'm a coffee drinker. Well, that's great. Maybe you have 2 or 3 cups of coffee per day. Maybe you have 2, and then you have 1 as an herbal tea, right? And the other thing I would say is, again, my drive and my passion is for health and wellness. So that said, if you're gonna incorporate herbal teas, and I think you should drink all types of herbal teas, really, because a lot of them that are available for us are pretty safe, right? And then the other thing I would say is that you want to drink the cup of herbal tea. I would suggest that you drink it, let's say 30 minutes before eating, or if you have eaten, you want to wait maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours to have the tea. And the reason you want to do that is because once the tea gets into your system, it goes directly to the bloodstream, unhindered, and so that's why you optimize the benefits of the herbs. But yeah, in answer to your questions, there are a lot of great brands out there. But what I do is more focused, and it's you get a more potent serving for everything.
That makes a lot of sense. I know we're going to wrap up, and I know that Steve's going to do the closing monologue. I don't know if Sasha's got any thoughts or questions as well. But once we get done, and after about another 6 minutes, we'll get to Sasha's show as well, which is around Ukraine, Russia, and China, and that'll be coming at 11. And of course, one of the things I love to get all the guests to do when we have guests is to tell how they can be reached and contacted. So we'll get to that, and also Steve's closeout. So Sasha, any quick questions you've got? You've been listening. I know Dan made a comment earlier, and he may have a quick question as well, but I know we're winding down, and of course I do want to give them time to give how they can be reached for their different levels of expertise and all along those lines.
Honestly, I have difficult time to connect what's happening right now in Ukraine, where thousands of people are dying every single day, with the merits of coffees and teas and some other stuff. I'm being blunt with you. No time to play how it's cute, how it's interesting, it's great, and so on. Have no time for it. Sorry.
No problem. And like I said, we'll get to the conversation around Ukraine, Russia, and China at 11 o'clock and all along those lines and all in that space. Like I said, before we get to Steve's closeout and everything, and I'll start like I did at the beginning with ladies first. But Jennifer, if you can tell how you can be reached, and then probably go alphabetical after that. So Gladstone and then Rick and all in that space. So definitely, Jennifer, if you can tell folks how you can be reached, and definitely how you can be contacted, and hopefully there are folks that have got some information that they were finding very knowledgeable and very much needed at this particular time, and all along those lines in this conversation. But Jennifer, if you can tell how you can be reached.
Yes, you can get the book at products with an S .thecoachinyourpocket.com, and you can also come in deeper with me about these subjects at thecoachinyourpocket.com/join, or just email me, Jennifer@thecoachinyourpocket.com.
Appreciate it. Gladstone, if you can tell folks how they can get in touch with you, get the tea, and how they can reach out to you as well.
Yes, so thank you so much, Mark, and everyone for having me. You can reach me at www.zabicolife, that is ZABICOLIFE.com. And also, if you want to reach out with questions, you could just do support@zabicolife.com. I'm more than welcome to answer all the questions, pointers, suggestions, counseling, all of this good stuff. I'm here for you. Thank you.
Sounds good. Rick, if you can tell folks how you can be.
Sure, yeah. You can catch me on Rick at hrsearchco.com. The company is HR Search Co. HRSEARCHCO. And I'm at Rick at hrsearchco.com.
Sounds good and everything. I think I can speak for the rest of the panelists as well. We hope that you will make return trips. I know that Lee was learning, as was Jacoby and Steve and Dan and even Sasha. So I think that I can speak for them if they think that I can't. And all they'll check, but they'll tell me that I can't. But I think that we would love to have you all back at some point or another, and all along those lines. So Jacoby.
I mean, this is a show on health and wellness and happiness. So what better way to close the show out but with a dad joke?
Oh, wow.
What sounds just like a sneeze and is made of leather?
I don't know.
A shoe. We're done here.
I have one.
All right, then go for it.
Okay, so what do you call a toothless bear?
I don't know. What do you call a toothless bear?
A gummy bear.
Right.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to you.
No, it's been a wonderful show. We'll see you tomorrow. We are going to prepare for Ukraine even though we have the Sasha store. So World Edition on Thursday, August 24th, will be on Ukraine. I might be off-site, but I'm going to get online and hopefully come briefly in from where I am in Raleigh. Although, Mark, I may be gone on Thursday, so we might do the Ukraine Independence show on Friday. I'll let you know. But I want to end my remarks with just, I want to end my remarks today with just the stories. Recently, we see a lot the stories of, how many people are dead, how many casualties. But when you hear the real life stories of immigrants who lived through Ukraine I read at the Art Gallery in Durham when I was the keynote speaker this weekend at the Independence Day celebration at Art Gallery. Yulia Setnik, who actually survived 3 bombings in Kiev to get her 9-year-old daughter to safety and come to Durham, where now he's an artist and a philanthropist selling her money. Or Misha Shevets, a Ukrainian who's a PhD at UNC Chapel Hill, studying artificial intelligence and neural networks, who, when he calls home, can't even hear his parents and brothers and sisters because of the bombing that's going on. We often forget the people that are living away from their families, that are seeing their country destroyed in murder and genocide, and literally children waking up every day, seeing the body parts of their parents dismembered in front of their very eyes, orphans living through literal hell and strife. It's quite troubling. And so we're going to do what we can to make sure that we tell those stories on World Edition, so that we know that the people of Ukraine are not alone, and that we have to do more than just say we hope that they fight for their freedom, but remember that they're dying for their freedom as well. So I just want to end with those thoughts, and we'll talk more about this on Thursday or Friday. But thank you all so much for being with us. We'll be back tomorrow for another edition of World Edition. Thank you. Godspeed.